It was just past 11 on a quiet December night in Las Vegas. Inside the home of a young military family, everything seemed ordinary. Dinner had been shared, the children were asleep, and the father prepared for another late shift. But as he stepped into the cool night air, the silence shattered. A burst of violence echoed through the neighborhood, and within moments, the home that once symbolized safety and love was transformed into a scene of chaos and fear. What happened that night would expose hidden secrets, unexpected betrayals, and a conspiracy that no one could have imagined. If you're a fan of true crime and criminal investigations, you won't want to miss our new book, The Ultimate Book of Serial Killers: 180 Files of the World's Most Notorious Murderers, now available on Amazon. You can also purchase the PDF version directly from our website for instant download. You'll find the link in the video description and in a pinned comment. Now, let's dive into today's case. Nathan Paet was born on February 12, 1982, on the island of Guam, a Pacific paradise where the ocean is never far away and the traditions of family and community run deep. He was one of 5 children born to Mateo and Carmelina Paet, and from an early age he stood out for his warmth and generosity. Those who knew him described him as loving and respectful, a son who was supportive of his parents, a brother who was always ready to help, and a friend who could light up a room with his playful energy. At cultural gatherings, Nathan was remembered as the best dancer, moving with joy and pride in his heritage. Life on Guam shaped his spirit. He embraced the island's natural beauty, spending his free time surfing and paddleboarding across the turquoise waters. The beaches were his sanctuary, a place where he felt at peace. But Nathan's story was not only about adventure. As a teenager, he fell in love with Michelle, the girl who would become his lifelong partner. They began dating in high school, and before long, they welcomed their first child, starting a family while still very young, but united by devotion and love. Guam, while far from the U.S. mainland, is an unincorporated territory of the United States. This unique status meant that residents like Nathan could serve in the U.S. military. In April 2002, he seized that opportunity and enlisted in the United States Air Force. It was the start of a career that would take him far from home, but never far from the heart of his family. His first assignment brought him to Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska, where he worked as part of the aircraft weapons support team. The move from tropical Guam to the frozen landscapes of Alaska was dramatic, yet Nathan adapted with the same determination that defined his character. In 2006, he transferred to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, where he became Chief of Weapons Loading for the Thunderbolt Ground Attack Aircraft Squadron. That same year, he married Michelle, the only woman he had ever loved. Together, they celebrated the arrival of their second child, strengthening the bond of a young family that was already proving resilient under the challenges of military life. Nathan's career advanced quickly. By 2007, he was training in logistics preparation and materials management, expanding his expertise. Later, at Nellis Air Force Base, he served as an entry supervisor for the 99th Squadron. That same year, He earned a promotion to junior non-commissioned officer in charge of maintenance supply, overseeing critical support for attack aircraft operations. His work ethic and loyalty stood out, and his service during the Iraq War only added to his reputation as a man who was hardworking, dedicated, and proud to wear the uniform of his country. When he returned from deployment, Nathan was stationed in Las Vegas. By then, he and Michelle were raising 4 children. Their family of 6 was the center of his world. At home, Nathan was not only a husband and father, but also a community figure, coaching a local Dodgers t-ball team, juggling night shifts for extra income, and doing everything he could to give his family the best life possible. Michelle managed the busy household, cared for the children, and worked in telemarketing, all while supporting Nathan through the demands of his military service. Approaching his 28th birthday, Nathan held the rank of technical sergeant. On the surface, life seemed full and steady, marked by hard work, sacrifice, and the joy of raising a growing family. December 1st, 2010, began as an ordinary day. Michelle, feeling unwell, came home earlier than usual. The family shared dinner, spent time together, and Nathan, following his routine, dozed off for a short nap in the living room. That evening seemed peaceful, with no hint of the tragedy about to unfold. When his alarm failed to sound, Nathan awoke abruptly at 11 p.m. Realizing he was late for his shift, he rushed to get dressed, pulling on his camouflage uniform before heading out the door around 11:30 p.m. But moments later, the night was shattered. Multiple gunshots rang out, breaking the silence of their quiet neighborhood. Nathan stumbled back into the house, gravely wounded. He had been shot 5 times. Collapsing inside, he left his wife and children in shock and terror. Michelle desperately dialed 911, her voice frantic as she reported her husband's condition. The operator instructed her to perform CPR, but despite the efforts of first responders, Nathan was pronounced dead. The scene was devastating. The garage door stood open, and blood covered the floor, the walls, and even Nathan's workout bench. Inside the vehicle, more blood marked the violence of the attack. Inside the vehicle, more blood marked the violence of the attack. His blood-stained uniform lay on the floor where paramedics had tried to save him. Neighbors who had once thought of their community as safe now stood in disbelief. How could such violence strike a quiet suburban street in Las Vegas? For Michelle and the children, the loss was immeasurable. Nathan had been their protector, their provider, and their source of strength. The investigation would soon focus on the final hours of Nathan's life, piecing together every detail of that day. Michelle, as the main witness, provided her account of events, describing a day that had started as ordinary, only to end in tragedy. When detectives began piecing together the events of that night, they turned first to what those inside the house had witnessed. Michelle recalled hearing 2 sharp bangs as Nathan left, but fear kept her from looking outside. The children had been startled by the noise, and she focused on calming them down. Moments later, Nathan stumbled back through the door, gravely injured, and collapsed inside. At the crime scene, officers found Nathan's wallet, keys, and all of his personal belongings untouched. Nothing had been taken. For investigators, this was the first clear sign that the shooting was not a random robbery. Whoever pulled the trigger had come with one purpose: to end Nathan's life. Detectives considered that his killer may have been lying in wait, concealed across the street near 2 vacant homes that stood dark and empty. Whoever did this seemed to know Nathan's schedule and had chosen the exact moment he would be vulnerable, leaving the house for his late shift. Still, detectives could not rule out other possibilities. They questioned whether Nathan had been hiding personal troubles, such as gambling debts, a loan shark demanding repayment, or even an affair that might have made him a target. Yet early checks of his phone told a very different story. There were no suspicious contacts, no secret messages, no unexplained financial transactions. His phone contained only photos of his wife and children. To investigators, it looked like proof that Nathan truly was what people said he was: a devoted husband, a loving father, and a man with no hidden life. As police canvassed the neighborhood, new details began to emerge. Several witnesses mentioned seeing a black car speeding away immediately after the gunshots. Others reported a man in a brown or tan hoodie fleeing the area on foot. These details offered the first possible trail to follow. News of the murder reached Nathan's family back in Guam almost instantly. His parents, Mateo and Carmelina, were devastated. They boarded the first available flight, traveling thousands of miles across the Pacific to Las Vegas. For his mother, the journey was unbearable. She wept the entire way, struggling to grasp that her son was gone. When she arrived, Michelle collapsed into her arms in grief. Nathan's brother Eric and sister-in-law Veronica also rushed to support the family, but they were soon drawn into the investigation themselves. Detectives asked Eric and Veronica about Nathan and Michelle's marriage. On the surface, the couple seemed solid, but Veronica recalled noticing something unsettling during the Thanksgiving holiday just days earlier. At a family gathering, the warmth between Nathan and Michelle appeared strained. It felt, she said, as if they were simply tolerating one another. Eric added that he had noticed the family's kitchen pantry and refrigerator were nearly empty, a sign of growing financial stress. Michelle would later confirm this in a follow-up interview. She admitted that the family had been struggling with money, which explained why Nathan worked exhausting double shifts. She also acknowledged that a co-worker at her telemarketing job drove a car resembling the black vehicle seen near the crime scene. Under questioning, she confessed to occasional flirting with men at work, revealing cracks in the marriage that investigators had not previously known. This led detectives to a man named Michael Rodriguez, a 31-year-old co-worker of Michelle's with a criminal past that included forgery and theft. When approached by police, Michael agreed to speak with them. He denied any romantic interest in Michelle and insisted he had nothing to do with the murder. But the digital evidence began to tell another story. A review of text messages exchanged between Michelle and Michael raised immediate red flags. Just before the crime, Michael had sent a cryptic message referring to a contract and a client named Van Dyke. Investigators suspected this was coded language connected to Nathan's death. At 11:12 p.m., just minutes before Nathan was shot, Michael texted Michelle, saying he hoped she was feeling better and that he was about to finish the Van Dyke contract by morning because it had been such a headache. 2 minutes later, another message followed, thanking her for her help and asking if she needed rest. For detectives, these words were chilling. They suggested coordination, a plan carried out in secret, and a possible conspiracy that now reached far beyond a simple shooting in a suburban neighborhood. At 11:19 p.m., just minutes after Nathan had rushed out the door, Michelle sent Michael a message. She told him she had taken her medication and was going back to sleep, but added that her husband had just left. What struck investigators as deeply suspicious was her casual remark that being late with the contract was a nuisance. The coded language seemed impossible to ignore. When questioned, Michael offered an alibi. He claimed that earlier that night, around 9 p.m., he had been at a well-known department store where he met a woman named Shannon, a former adult film actress. According to his story, the two felt an instant connection and decided to check into the Sunset Station Hotel for a one-night encounter. He insisted they arrived around 11 p.m., a timeline that would have placed him away from the crime scene. With no immediate evidence to contradict his account, detectives had little choice but to release him while they verified his story. But then, a dramatic twist changed the entire direction of the case. A woman came forward. Her identity initially kept confidential. It was Shannon. She revealed that Michael's story was not only misleading, it was a cover-up. Tearful and fearful for her own safety, she told investigators she had been coerced into providing a false alibi. Shannon confessed she had been promised a small amount of money. Her account introduced two more names into the investigation: Jessica, a young woman, and her partner Corey, a seasoned criminal with an extensive record that included robbery, auto theft, grand theft, armed robbery, and credit card fraud. On the night of the murder, Shannon said she and Michael had been at Jessica and Corey's apartment in Henderson. Around 11 p.m., Michael and Corey left in a black Cadillac. Jessica told her the men were targeting a heroin dealer and needed Shannon to act as their alibi. While the men were gone, Jessica lit a fire in the fireplace. When Michael and Corey returned, Shannon watched them burn clothing, destroy their phones, and even destroy her own phone to keep her tied to their story. They used bleach to clean and sprayed air freshener throughout the apartment. She was instructed to lie to the police and repeat their version of events. But the most chilling moment came when she overheard one of the men admit that he had shot Nathan. It was not a robbery at all. It was a planned execution. Investigators immediately began to verify her claims. Surveillance footage from the Sunset Station Hotel confirmed Shannon and Michael entered together, but not at 11 p.m. as he had said. They arrived roughly 40 minutes after the crime had already taken place. With this, his alibi collapsed. Armed with Shannon's statement, detectives obtained a search warrant for Jessica and Corey's apartment. Inside, they discovered latex gloves, bottles of air freshener from the same store mentioned earlier, and remnants of burned clothing, all consistent with Shannon's account. Attention turned once again to Michelle. In another round of interrogation, she finally admitted what investigators had already begun to suspect. She confessed to an affair with Michael and acknowledged that he had been the one to push for her husband's death. According to her, the motive was Nathan's military life insurance policy. Together, they had planned that once Nathan was gone, she and Michael would start a new life. Michelle tried to soften her role. She insisted that she had regrets and attempted to sabotage the plan. She explained that she never unlocked Nathan's truck as instructed and even turned off his alarm, hoping he would miss his shift and avoid the ambush. But detectives didn't believe her story. The text messages told a very different tale, one that painted her not as a reluctant bystander, but as an active participant in a deadly conspiracy. While the investigation moved forward, Nathan's loved ones were left to grieve. On Tuesday, December 7, 2010, a memorial service was held at the Chapel of Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. It was a private ceremony attended by his parents, siblings, and fellow service members. Michelle was notably absent. At the service, Nathan was remembered as a proud aviator, a dedicated technical sergeant, and above all, a devoted husband and father. His colleagues spoke of his tireless work ethic and the passion he brought to everything he did. With tears in his eyes, Nathan's brother Eric described him as a loyal and loving sibling, someone who supported everyone around him and seemed incapable of making an enemy. The loss was crushing. But even as the family mourned, police worked relentlessly to ensure justice. Within 6 days of the crime, detectives connected the pieces. On December 8, 2010, they arrested the three conspirators: Michael Rodriguez, 31, Corey, 33, and Jessica, just 23 years old. All were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy. The next day, the final arrest came. Michelle Paet, 29, was taken into custody and charged with armed criminal action, conspiracy to commit a felony, and conspiracy to commit robbery. In her confession, she admitted to a 6-month affair with Michael and acknowledged helping plan her husband's murder. Together, they had imagined a future free of Nathan, but instead, the conspiracy unraveled in less than a week, leaving behind a family shattered and a legacy of betrayal that no one could have imagined. As investigators dug deeper, the full motive behind Nathan's murder came into focus. Beyond the affair with Michael, Michelle stood to gain financially from her husband's death. As the widow of a military officer, she was entitled to a payout of $400,000 from Nathan's military life insurance, plus another $250,000 from a separate policy. Nearly $750,000 was on the line. Pressed by detectives, Michelle admitted that she and Michael began discussing killing Nathan as early as October 2010. She acknowledged that on the night of the crime, she was fully aware her lover and his accomplices were waiting for Nathan to open the garage door and start his car. When Nathan didn't leave at the expected time, Michael began sending her messages. Michelle confessed that her replies, coded in the language of contracts, were meant to let him know Nathan would be late, but that the plan should go ahead. She also revealed chilling details of the alternatives they had considered. One plan involved shooting Nathan in his car, then abandoning the vehicle in an apartment complex, hidden under a cover. Another involved kidnapping him, blindfolding him, and taking him into the desert, where he would be tormented before being killed. Nathan, unaware of the affair or the conspiracy, had no idea his wife was plotting his death. Michelle was ordered held without bail and placed under close supervision at the Clark County Detention Center due to fears she might attempt self-harm. All four accused, Michelle, Michael, Corey, and Jessica, were formally charged with murder with a deadly weapon and conspiracy. Michael and Corey faced additional charges for firearm possession as convicted felons. In front of a grand jury, each pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors informed the judge that the Capital Punishment Review Committee would meet to decide whether the death penalty should be pursued. The process stalled as the defense requested time, arguing they could not proceed until that decision was made. Years of delays followed, but by 2015, justice finally began to unfold. In September of that year, Michael Rodriguez reached a deal to avoid execution by pleading guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of appeal or parole. The following month, Michelle appeared in court, facing the sorrowful stares of Nathan's parents. Breaking down in tears, she apologized to them and to her children. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and to first-degree murder with a deadly weapon. Though she claimed Michael had pressured her and that she had lost control of the situation, the evidence showed otherwise. Her text messages revealed intent, planning, and full participation. In 2016, Corey also admitted guilt to avoid the death penalty. His attorney asked for a chance at parole, but the judge denied it, calling Corey a continuing danger to society. He was sentenced to life without parole. Jessica, meanwhile, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. Though she had been present when the crime was planned and evidence destroyed, she received a far lighter punishment, reported as house arrest. The final and most anticipated sentencing came on March 3, 2016. Michelle once again stood before the judge. Crying, she admitted Nathan had been a good man and that her choices were unforgivable. She begged her in-laws to one day find the strength to forgive her. The prosecution reminded the court that lonely wife syndrome was no excuse for conspiring to kill a husband. Michelle, they said, was a manipulator, using tears, money, and sex to lure others into her plot, all while pretending to be a wife and mother at home. The defense argued she had been under Michael's influence, but the judge rejected that claim. In his ruling, he called Michelle's actions incomprehensible and deeply insidious. He expressed disbelief that she could sleep beside Nathan night after night, knowing she was plotting his death. He declared her a major participant in the crime, not a victim of manipulation. At the hearing, Nathan's mother was granted guardianship of his 4 children. She said that as a woman of faith, she chose to forgive Michelle for her soul's sake, but added that the damage done to the children was beyond forgiveness. Despite therapy, they remained traumatized, startled by loud noises, and fearful that their mother might harm them too. Finally, Michelle was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She would never walk free again. For Nathan's family, the sentence closed a painful chapter, though the wounds remained. In the judge's words, nothing could undo the betrayal of a wife who had turned her husband's devotion into a death sentence. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.